Circle of Hope Network, doing life and being church together.
So this presentation was initially developed as a request by a local church. Is it okay, or am I making any noises here? Okay. So it was initially developed as a request by a local church that was seeking for opportunities to use the significant gifts of chaplains in preaching and touching on people. And what is interesting, it began this way. When I was a hospital chaplain, a lot of people called the chaplain's office because they were having difficulties with grief, having difficulties returning or recovering from the loss of a loved one. And so they would call the chaplain's office asking for if we have any information about local churches that had grief recovery groups. And what was interesting, once again, I'm probably gonna show a little bit of my I think I already showed a little bit of my frustration with my brothers and sisters in my own denomination. What was interesting is that for 16 years we were not able to find a Seventh-day Adventist church that had a program to help people recover from loss. There were a lot of Methodist churches that had that, a lot of Lutherans, and even UCC Church, United Church of Christ, and etc., but never ever had a Seventh-day Adventist, and with such beautiful message that we have. Come on. It reminded me, Pastor, we are from Inner America. You remember Pastor Sergio Moctezuma? He used to be the director of our lay activities. And when I was in my initial years, we had this huge lay gathering in Venezuela. Thousands of members from different places came, and we had this huge, and Elder Moctezuma, that was the year before his retirement. So Elder Moctezuma was going to preach a sermon for everybody, and he began his sermon with this statement: "We the Seventh-day Adventists." I remember that because I was translating his sermon from Spanish to English for the English-speaking people. So he said, "We the Seventh-day Adventists, we have great truth." And everybody went like, "Amen." And then he said that we preach like they are great lies. So, out of that was born this idea that grief and people that are suffering after the death of a loved one actually are what we would call in evangelism low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit. And then it has developed into the point I was sharing with the people that was sitting around me in the table last night, that I am part of the faculty at Andrews University, and I teach at the Masters of Divinity. I teach 3 classes: Intro to Chaplaincy. I teach also Advanced Trauma and Crisis Ministry. And I also teach Ministry to the Bereaved and the Dying. In my Advanced Trauma and Crisis Ministry, I have a whole section that I called Grief as a Gospel Opportunity. And this is where this comes from. So we're going to talk about this. Did you realize I'm already adopting some Canadian in my accent? So we're going to talk about this. Grief as a gospel opportunity. What is grief? Grief is the process of psychological, social, somatic, and spiritual reaction to the perception of loss. Once again, process of, there are four components here: psychological, social, somatic, and spiritual reactions. I also teach this grief class. I also taught it in Africa last year. And it was very interesting to sit with some of our pastors in Africa. And it's interesting because Africa is such a huge continent. And we tend to think that everybody in Africa is the same, but they're not. Every country has a different way to react and different way to deal with this. And now we were talking about funeral service costumes. And one of the pastors in Nigeria, from Nigeria, was telling us that they had a situation in the church. They had, first of all, in Nigeria, it is acceptable to take the body to the church for funeral services. But if you go to Zambia, it is unacceptable. You cannot take the body to the church for services. It is unacceptable. So it's interesting how, countries that are neighboring, they have different points of view in all this. But the pastor from Nigeria shared with us this story that was very interesting. Because they had the funeral services, they had everything ready, and then the family requested to be left alone in the sanctuary with the body, and they closed all the doors and all the windows and stayed in the church with the body. And they stayed in there for about 20-30 minutes, and everybody was like, what is going on? So they realized something. Those family members were in a group within Nigeria that believes that when someone dies, they need to sever the head off the body. So when they asked everybody to leave the church, guess what they were doing? Cutting the head off. So that the evil spirits wouldn't take the head of the person. And I'm thinking, they are Seventh-day Adventists. What happened? Then I realized something. I went back to the idea that I've been sharing with you, this cultural humility. That is what they believe. That's what they grew up with. So we had this awesome conversation about how do you, as a pastor, provide ministry to this family? Because what they were asking me is, what kind of discipline should we give this family for doing what they did? Now think about it for a minute, and think about how we react to the customs of people. And how we want to make them. So we go back to, this is the process of psychological, social. In this case, the family is cutting the head off. Why? Because if it is the social understanding, it is the cultural understanding that they need to do that in order for their loved one to be ready. And they're even adding a little bit of their Seventh-day Adventist identity. Because they want their loved ones, the loved one, to be in the grave, the body of the loved one to be in the grave and not have the evil spirits there when Jesus comes back. Now, is it a time for us to fix their theology?
No.
So what do we do with this? How do we respond to the needs of people when they are experiencing this awful, tremendous pain of loss? One of the things that have kind of kept me away from being with you guys all the time, after I talk, I go back to the hotel and all that, is because I have been, right this week, I have been working on the funeral arrangements for the person who was my youth director when I started ministry. When I came to California, found out that he was now a pastor in California, near where I live. And he and his wife are single-handedly responsible for me getting to know my wife and becoming the couple that we are. So this is people that are very close and dear to me. And he battled stomach cancer for a year. And last week, the week before last one, he died after battling cancer. But a month and a half ago, he called me to his office and he said, well, to his room. He called me to his room and he said, I want you to work with me. We are going to set my funeral services. We're going to make we're going to prepare our funeral services. So the hymns that we're going to be singing, he chose. The Bible text that we're going to be reading, he chose. The sermon I'm going to preach was something that he and I worked on. And I've been in communication back and forth with the family and the church and making arrangements because, people come out of the woodworks in situations like this. So we have about 25 pastors that are showing up, and they all want to speak. And when you give a microphone to a pastor, that's going to be dangerous. But we have to give an opportunity for people to process what is going on, what is happening with them. We have to give an opportunity to the family to express gratitude and to express whatever it is that they have in their minds. So when we do this, we are helping people to process the feelings that they have, the psychological, social, somatic, and spiritual reactions that they have at the perception of their loss, the way they have seen the loss, the way they experience it, and the way they feel it is right to respond. And by the way, there is no right or wrong way to respond to loss. You have also seen me, and some of you said yesterday when we talked about the couple of cases that we talked about, how the chaplain was able to withhold his judgment so that he could see what was going on around. At any moment, at no other moment, this is more important than when someone has experienced loss and they are grappling with the reality of they don't know what to do with the absence of their loved ones or whatever it is that they have. By the way, you want a good book is entitled All Our Losses, All Our Griefs. All Our Losses, All Our Griefs. You can find that book in Amazon, and it's one of the best books on this. All Our Losses, All Our Griefs. There is also another book that I will recommend for all of you, but especially for those of you who are, excuse me, for those of you who are in church ministry and have access to a church. There's another book entitled Stilling the Storm. Like still waters, stilling the storm. And then the subtitle will give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Utilizing worship to overcome crisis and loss. Stilling the storm. So we have defined then, we are ready on the definition of grief, right? It is the psychological, social, somatic, and spiritual response. And remember, there are 4 dimensions in this: psychological, social, somatic, and spiritual. When I say somatic, what am I talking about? Let me see if we are understanding each other.
Physical body.
The response of the body, correct. What would be an automatic somatic response to grief? Tears. What would be another automatic somatic response to grief?
Even withdrawal can be one.
Withdrawal can be another one, yes. But let me see the nurse in the room.
Sometimes you could get something as diarrhea.
Diarrhea. Sweating.
Vomiting. Sometimes people laugh.
Yep. Sometimes people laugh. Now, both of you pastors gave me withdrawal and anger. Those are emotional responses to loss.
Is it verbal? Is that? When your face comes out, is that?
Well, that is result of some physical pain that the person is feeling. So the is not a somatic response, but the physical pain is a somatic response. There is raised heartbeat. There may be some headaches. There may be red eyes. Raised blood pressure. With tears, we already talked about that. With people who have diabetes, they may have some spikes in their volume, in their values. So all those are somatic, physical responses to loss. You need to be aware of that. Not because you're going to do anything about that, because you're not a doctor or a nurse, but because you being aware of that, you can get the help that they need. Are you with me? So you have those social responses. I think we talked about that. And then what are the spiritual results, reactions to loss? Questioning. Good. Huh?
Why, Lord?
The question. Once again, we go back to the question. Why? And let me stop there for a moment and ask, why? Does anybody have an answer for that why question?
Because.
There is no answer to that question. There is no answer. Once, when I was a naive starting pastor in chaplaincy in CPE, I tried to get into that answer. And you know what the patient told me? She turned to me and said, "And who died and made you God's attorney?" There is no answer to the why. As a matter of fact, have you found God answering the why question in the Bible? Have you seen God answering that? There's a reason for that. Do you know why? Do you know why God never explains? Because the day God has to explain His actions to human beings, that's the day God ceases to be God. All right, I said something strong, and you guys are looking at me like my daughter watching TV. What do you hear me say? The day God has to explain His actions to human beings, that's the day God ceases to be God.
Even heaven?
Well, Grieving, God doesn't have to explain it. He's sovereign God, but
Sovereignty.
on occasions,
Uh-huh.
He explains his business to us, but He does it because He loves.
Say more about that.
Well, all the revelation of His creating acts in the Bible are a way of revealing God's desire and purpose.
That's a way.
And at times He also reveals the consequences of sin.
Last time I read the Bible, it says the heavens declare the glory of God. His creation declare His glory. They don't explain God. Yes, sir.
The story of Job comes to mind when he asked God all those questions. The answer God gave him says, "Where were you?" Begin to fathom my awesomeness. And so there are some things that we will never understand and God will not explain to us. Because as you rightly said, And to do that, he ceases to be God. And that is why he says that his thoughts are not ours, and his ways are not ours.
Yeah. The other thing is interesting, going back to the book of Job. You have 47 chapters. And everything is just philosophy until everybody shuts up and they let God speak. And then when God speaks, he says, "Where were you? Where were you?" And then after God says, "Where were you?" and all that, then Job says, I had heard about you, but now I have seen you. I have experienced you. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there because I know I'm among theological scholars here. So, this is what grief is about. And then I'm also going to go back and talk about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. You're familiar with that woman? She's a very famous person who studied grief, and she created this theory that grief has 5 stages. The problem with Kubler-Ross is a couple things. Number one, she wrote the book On Death and Dying in 1969. That's 50 years ago, by the way, which set up the 5 stages of grief. Keep this in mind, the 5 stages of grief. It was written after seeing the treatment of dying patients in hospitals and working with Holocaust survivors. She wrote this after seeing the way people were being treated when they were dying. And then look at the basis for her theories. What is the basis? She was looking for the humanistic perspective of death and dying. Humanistic perspective of death and dying. There are a couple of problems with Kubler-Ross. Number one, though, you got to give it to the woman. She decided to say something about this. She decided to do something, which is much more than what most people do. Especially among us Latinos, for example, the talk of death is something that you do not have. But the reality is, statistically speaking, my dear friends, 1 out of every 1 will die. Because as long as we are on this side of eternity, we have to deal with death and dying. Right? You don't sound very convinced. Pastors, you need to grapple with the reality that the only thing you need to die is to be alive. I know I'm being a little bit facetious and what have you, but I think you need to come with this understanding that we will all die. God has an answer to death, but that's another conversation. Now, the other problem that we have with Kubler-Ross is that when she talks about the 5 stages of grief, the idea is that you're probably climbing a ladder. You know what I'm saying? So you get over the first stage and you move into the second stage. And you get over the second stage and you move to the third one, and then so forth. When in reality, what we have learned after 50 years is that it's not as defined as she would have us believe it. So rather than imagining the 5 stages of grief with you guys, I want you to understand that when you think about the 5 stages of grief that Kubler-Ross laid the foundation on, they are not 5 stairs or 5 steps that you go over the first. All right. Interesting. All right. Have a great day. Dismiss. All right.
I'll give it to him.
Please. So when you think about the 5 stages of grief, I need you to think about not 5 steps up a ladder. I need you to think about 5 steps in a roundabout.
5 steps in a roundabout.
Yeah. I need you to think about a cycle. A cycle. But this cycle doesn't go around like a roundabout here in Winnipeg. You guys have a lot of roundabouts around here. But it is not the same as that. When you enter in this way, I'm sorry, yeah, this way. When you entered and then you get off on the first one or the second one or the third one, whatever the case is. This is a roundabout where you go and then you may be on the first one and then you move to the fourth one. And then you may be on the fourth one and you return to the second one. Okay? So this is not, I want you to think about this. This is not step, 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 and I'm out. No, this is I am going in a cycle here, and while I'm in the cycle, I may be in this stage, and then I move to this stage, and then I move to that stage, and then I come to this stage, and when I'm here in this stage, I may be out of the woods, but then something happens that reminds me of my loss, and then I go back to the first stage. Are you with me so far? And the good thing about human beings is that God created us that way, to the point where it may not even be the anniversary of the loss, or may not even be something that it may be you are minding your own business, going into the old spaghetti factory, and then somebody goes next to you that is wearing the perfume of someone, and boom, you go back to the first one. Do you understand what I'm saying here? So this is not something that we do stage by stage and then we solve the problem. And the interesting thing about all this is that when I see grief and when I see the 5 stages of grief as a cycle rather than, steps up a ladder, then I can see that God has an answer to each one of those stages. And so God has provided a way out of those each one of those stages. God has provided the way out, the way to solve that stage. The interesting thing is God in His infinite grace gives us the opportunity that when we feel one of those stages, when we get back to those stages, we can always go back to the answer God has for that stage. Are you with me? So let's go over these stages one by one. What's the first stage? According to Kubler-Ross, the first one is denial. And the immediate reaction when someone we love dies, what is the immediate reaction? No!
Yeah.
I remember last week I came out with my wife. We were out to do some chores, to take care of some things. And as I am driving around, I get a nail in one of my tires. So and then I get the nail on the tire. I change. I put on the emergency tire and so forth. And then I notice that I'm driving my daughter's car, and I notice that my daughter has never rotated the tires on the car. So the tire is absolutely useless. So what do? I go to a tire shop and I am having all the tires replaced. And as I am having all the tire replaced, I see a phone call. Janela. Janela is the youngest daughter of Pastor Silva, my friend. I saw that and I went like, oh no. She's crying on the other line. She calls me dad because I'm her second dad, according to her. And she goes, Dad, what's happening, Janela? My dad just died, just passed away. And my immediate reaction was, what? I knew he was dying for a whole year. The night before, I was sitting with him next to his bed. Next day, she calls me. And I immediately fell down. Immediately. So that's the denial. No, you gotta be kidding. Are you sure he's dead? Yes, sir.
This material is very important. Are you going to share it with us?
Yes.
Slides.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, what is denial? According to Kubler-Ross, this is the definition of the denial. A conscious, or at times even unconscious, refusal to accept facts, information, reality, etc., relating to the situation concerned. So, what is the biblical response to denial? And the Nile is more than a river in Egypt. All right? I'm amongst theologians. This is where you are part of this conversation. What is biblical response to denial? Dear finger, it looks like I'm alone in this room. Come on, guys. How do you respond as a pastor to someone who is in denial?
But you told us not to give the biblical solution, but to just shut up and listen.
What is
When they're going
denial?
Huh?
No, if we need to give an answer, we need to analyze what is denial.
Okay,
Denial is it's basically a reaction that is saying this is not happening.
So
It's fear then.
let's paint a picture here. Good. It's fear. Let's paint a picture. Mom has been taking care of her son for 7 years. He's a special needs kid. She has been taking care of her son for 7 years. And then all of a sudden, he collapses, calls the ambulance, and they bring the boy to the emergency room where he dies. And mom says, no, he's not dead. He jumps into bed with the boy. And she's not allowing the medical staff to come into the room to provide ministry and to provide support to the boy and to her. He's not dead. You guys are lying. He's not dead. I can hear his little heart beating. But he is dead. He has been clinically dead for about an hour. So how do you respond to that mom? How do you help her?
Give her space.
Okay? What else?
Be there with her. Be there with her. Why do we feel the need to take them out of that stage?
Be there with her. So what you're saying is ministry of presence.
Yeah.
Okay. Say more.
For me, I would say give her time to accept the reality. At the same time, being there to accompany. And the reason why I'm saying that, I had a member whose only child, son, died, and kept him hooked for 1 year and 3 months. And refusing to accept the fact that he's dead, although all the medical team said he's dead, 1 year and 3 months. it took her that long to accept the fact that her son is dead.
The thing is, most people would say taking a year and 3 months to accept the fact that he's dead would say she's crazy. So how do you, as a pastor, advocate for her, at the same time help her come to the reality?
Well, for me, it was a matter of accepting her reality. I believe in my case that was the best I could have done. Because the whole medical team at the Montreal General Hospital, they were not able to convince her to do that. So for me, it was a matter of accepting her reality, at the same time being there for her, and little by little help her to process that. To the point where she can accept the fact that yes, he's gone. It's time to let him go.
Okay.
Are you saying he was brain dead in the hospital, hooked up to
Yes.
life support?
Yes. And they would not, and they definitely would not want to go against her wish, and they keep him. And I go to the hospital and I see him there.
I have one here, and one there.
I have just recently encountered Lauren's friend, and Lawrence mentioned to me, oh, my friend, her nephew passed away in the club, and she cannot accept that, and she wants to commit suicide. She's just in tears from day to day. And then one day I had a kind of visit somewhere just to have Bible study, and I thought of ACS. There are some food there available at this community service. So I took some. No, I remember Lawrence. And we went there. She's there. Still crying. I don't have any words to say, but she's there in tears. But because I have the context when Lawrence said that she hated God and where is God, I don't know what to do, but something came up. I prayed. Can I pray before I leave? And my prayer was, Lord, Father, where are you when Jesus died on the cross? Where are you when Peter and all those who were killed, they're faithful Christians? I don't have the answer. I don't know what to do, but that's what I'm going to say, just to ask you. And I know that the same question to Karen for her nephew. Where are you when nephew was shot? And then I left. I don't know. But Lauren said, you know what? That helps her.
Good.
I don't know. That's what I.
Good.
That's an instant, like.
Good. Yes, ma'am.
In 2017, one of my friends, her dad died, like suddenly, and I think 7 months before her mother died, she was 19? So 7 months before her mom died from cancer, and then 7 months later, the day I graduated, and like the morning after I graduated, her dad died. And she lost it. Like she let go. I've never seen anybody let go of like reality. Like she let go. I can't even describe what that looks like. Like she just let go. And then she was screaming and wailing, and then she kept calling his phone. And every time, like, I think whoever had his phone just would, like, they saw her calling and would just let it call. So every time it got to the voicemail, then she would just start, like, it was like she was going through, like, these waves of, like, oh, he's dead, and then she would call him again. Because she was at Berman, and he was in the Bahamas. And it was just I don't know, we didn't know what to do, so she just kept calling until she just didn't call anymore.
Do you realize there's a golden thread here? When people are going through that, those who are around them, they don't know what to do.
2 stories. One, I was a young staff nurse. I was still in my teenage years. And I was working in the emergency department of the hospital at which I worked at the time, a very small hospital. So it was only, emergency was only manned by a nurse and a doctor, nobody else for the night. And we had a very quiet night, and at 4 a.m., the bell rang, and we realized we had a patient coming in. The patient came in, and I took one look at the patient, and I said, he's dead, right? I didn't say that to the family members who were accompanying this patient. I just said it to the doctor. I said, this one is gone. And he nodded in agreement with me. Interestingly, both of us were Seventh-day Adventists. But in comes the father of the dead man, and he says to us, this is Dr. Michael, and I won't say the last name. And everything changed. That same doctor, a few hours before, had chatted with both of us and had told us of his plans for the next day, which surgeries he was going to do, blah, blah, blah. But now he's a dead person in front of us. And suddenly, both of us went into denial.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor grabbed the phone and started calling everybody, and soon the emergency room was overflowing with the best doctors Jamaica had at the time. And I think somewhere in our minds, we could bring this man back to life. I still have the burn marks on my hand from that experience. And everybody was trying to resuscitate this man. The best cardiologists were there, and they should know better. And we were resuscitating him for 3 hours. And then it suddenly dawned on me that something is not right about all of this. I think when I got burnt, because one of the machines overheated and I got burnt, I think that brought me back to reality. So I started singing this song, It Is Well. And I think the father who was there, which is unusual to, we don't allow that. He was just there. He came over to me and hugged me. And I think everybody just stopped, and we all started crying because we were so in denial. There is another case, this time though, a woman from church and her mom, they had a bad relationship. The woman, the mother was our church organist, and she was murdered. It was the most gruesome, it still is the most gruesome murder that I've experienced. She was murdered on Friday night, whilst her younger daughter was trying to get the older daughter to reconcile with the mother. And that older daughter, when it was discovered on Sabbath morning that her mother had been murdered, she started crying. And to this day, she's still going to the grave, talking to the mother, hoping. And that's a long time ago. I was a child then. And she's still hoping. And whenever I'm around her and she's in that mood, I tend to say, it is well. You know, but she's still not getting it.
So,
but it's very difficult to know how to react, I think, to denial, because it is to death. When you go into denial, or when a patient goes into denial, what do you tell them?
the answer is very, very simple. You guys have already painted the picture. The answer to denial is acceptance. Now, acceptance of what? We are not trying to move them into accept that the person that is there is dead. That's not my job. My responsibility is to accept them and accept that they're going through something. You know how Jesus dealt with this? He had a traitor on his midst. He knew Judas was going to sell him. And at the place where they're having the Last Supper, Jesus turns to him and says, whatever you're going to do, do it. Acceptance. Accepting the traitor. Think about it. Accepting the mom that has 1 year and 3 months. Accepting the young girl that lost mom and dad in 7 months span. Accepting that, what's happening here? Hold on.
It can't be real.
And then singing, it is well with my soul. See what I'm saying here? That makes sense? Next step. Normally people come from denial, then they go to anger. They go to anger. And over here, this is where we have some problems. You know why? Because normally, in our churches and within our context, we see anger as a negative emotion. The problem is, first of all, that emotions are neither positive nor negative. They're just emotions. How do you react to my statement? Emotions are not positive or negative, they're just emotions. I'm going to put it this way. I'm going to ask you a very, very simple question. Jesus is the Son of God, yes or no?
Yes.
Jesus ever sinned, yes or no?
No.
Then why he got angry and threw over the tables at the church? Did he sin there?
No.
Then why is it a sin when I as a pastor get angry?
Anger is anger is not a sin, but how you express it is a sin.
That's why Paul said, what about anger?
Get angry but don't sin.
You explode and that's a sin, and then you.
No, even the explosion is not the sin.
Oh yeah. Ooh.
The explosion is not the sin. What I do with the explosion, who I take with me in the explosion, that's what it's a sin.
Okay.
How do you express the anger? That's a sin.
Yeah.
42-year-old woman decides to go back to school and goes back to the university with her daughter the first day of classes. And they are going to the university for the first time, the first day of classes. She steps into the university atrium. Before they are going, daughter is going to one classroom, she's going to another classroom. So they kiss each other. Daughter turns around, and then here's the thumb. Turns around, mom had a fulminating heart attack that killed her right there and then. The day she was going back to school. So they called the ambulances and all that, and they bring the woman to our emergency room. So, you know, I'm with the daughter. She's going through these things. And the daughter says to me, Chaplain, prepare yourself. My dad's coming. Okay. I'm preparing myself. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to prepare myself. So, about an hour into the situation, in comes the biggest man I've ever seen. I see that guy over there and reminds me of that man. The big difference between that guy and this guy looks good. That guy had tattoos on his tattoos. Huge biker man. You know what I'm saying?
Oh.
Huge, huge. And he comes in. And I'm sitting with that young girl in our quiet room. We have a room in the hospital where we take families so that they can be kind of separate. So I'm sitting with her, and then he just opens, slams the door open, walks in, and looks at his daughter. And she just said, she's gone. That's all she said. She's gone. And then stood up and approached her dad. And her dad started punching her.
What? Wow.
Punching her. Like she was a punching bag. And I'm thinking, I got to do something. And then so I put my hand in. And the guy looks at me and says, who are you? I said, I'm the hospital chaplain. I'm here to help. And as I'm saying this, he looks at me and says, you are your effing God. Get out of my face or I'll kill you. Yes. And then I left the room, but then I called security. But the security guys in the hospital took one look at the guy and they said, we're not going in there. So there is anger right there. How do you respond to that anger?
Finish the story.
You guys want me to solve the problem for you.
He wants us to milk the teaching.
So how do you respond? The first thing I did is I literally walked away, and then I signaled that young lady to come out. Because that man was raged. He was enraged.
Would you have described him as having lost it?
Lost what?
His control of his emotion?
He lost his wife. He lost his wife, somebody he loved very much. And at the moment, I realized that the way he responded to me was, you and your God took my wife away from me.
That's the belief.
So my only concern at the time was for the safety of that younger lady. So I called her out. I separated her from him. And he was just expressing his anger to the point that we literally had to repatch the walls in that room after he left. He went home and he screamed that he was going to do something. We didn't know what it was that he was going to do. But we weren't going to take any chances. My main concern was for the safety of that young lady. Mm-hmm. So we took her away, and then she looked at me and said, don't worry, chaplain, it's okay. So apparently there were some dynamics in the family. I know he left, we called the police. And by the time he came back, we had a full batch of cops in the hospital waiting for him. And when he saw that, he went, I'm okay, I'm not going to do anything. He had calmed down. So in that anger, first of all, you have to accept people have different ways to react. Like the sister said back there will be some families that are going to start laughing uncontrollably. Yeah. I had another case when, husband and wife worked different shifts. She worked she worked nights, he worked days, or vice versa. I don't remember what, He works nights, she works days. So he was working at Disney World, came in at 5 o'clock in the morning, kissed his wife, because that's the way they did it. He kissed her so she could wake up. He went into bed, and she got out of bed, had breakfast, and left to go to work. About 10 o'clock that morning, the daughter comes home because she comes to give dad breakfast. And when she comes home, she finds dad dead. They called 911, ambulance comes, they come to the emergency department. And so, he's declared dead. She is working. So we had to send the police to go pick her up at work to bring her to the hospital. So when she comes into the hospital, she can't believe what has happened because in the morning he kissed her. He woke her up with a kiss. She can't believe what has happened, and she is just expressing. And here's the other side of this thing. She's not angry at that moment. She is just expressing, sobbing and crying very, very, very hard. She is, I can say she lost it. Okay, that's okay. So she's expressing all this. Man, sorry. Parenthesis here. Yesterday they announced that there's an opening at the North American division for one of the associate directors. We had one that retired. Man, people are calling me like crazy about this thing. Like I have any notion about that. Go to the website and fill out the application. Close the parentheses, come back.
Your troubles, no.
I am angry for my troubles. Here's, so she's crying and she's expressing her pain and all that. And the nursing supervisor in the emergency room comes to her and says, you either shut up and stop crying or I'm not going to let you go into your room, into your husband's room. And then I was angry. And then I called that nurse apart, and I called her into the break room, and I said, hold on, why did you call me here? Because you were the one who called me. Well, you're the chaplain. You're supposed to be here to support the family. And why would you treat that lady the way you treated her? Because she is disrupting everybody. Well, let me ask you something. If the one in there was your husband, would you be disrupting everybody or not? Well, but she needs to be more conscious about the people that are around. No. So you're either going to let me do my job or I just walk out of here. I said that nurse. You're either going to let me do my job. I'm here to support that woman. And then we're going to talk about what's going on with you.
Did the nurse tell you to shut up too?
Yeah, she did. And 24 hours later, she didn't have a job.
She lost the job.
Yep.
She lost it.
You know why? She was drunk.
During your time of conversation?
So, anger. How do we respond to anger?
Acceptance.
There you go. Once again, acceptance. People have a way they react. And once again, please understand this. Anger is not a sin. Anger is not something wrong. It's not a negative emotion. It's usually an emotion. Emotions do not have values. They're not either positive or negative. They are just that. They are emotions. Yes, sir.
Sometimes acceptance wasn't enough in my experience, and when they expect me to get angry too.
Yeah. There will be people that expect you to get angry too.
Why are you so calm and I'm so angry?
And I will say, well, let me know more about why you want me to be angry. Let's talk about this. Tell me more. Why do you want me to be angry? And also, you know, another.
You feel better about being angry.
Interesting. So let's unpack that. Normally, anger. Now I'm going into a little bit of a technical conversation here. Normally, anger is a secondary emotion. So let's talk about what is the primary emotion. What is your anger trying to protect?
Irritation.
Oh, your irritation. Tell me more about this irritation. Why are you irritated?
When someone giving you pressure. That's the one that you are intruding your space. And there's an irritation.
But aren't you doing the same, trying to make me feel the same way you are?
But back to that biker sort of.
No, it's okay. It's okay. See what I'm saying here? Why are you irritated? Are you irritated because you want me to react the way you want me to react? We're role playing here.
Yeah, I think so. Because of your reaction, I am thinking that we should be reacting that way.
Yeah.
Which I don't have any.
Let's just get angry, both of us. What are we going to accomplish with that?
We'll not be listening to each other. We'll be fighting.
So perhaps maybe it's good that I am not angry, and I can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
You're really angry.
Yes, I am.
See the interaction?
So the biker husband is angry and get your effing God out of here. If you're not angry, it's like you're denying what the reality of what the situation is. Because you're too calm. How could you be so calm in this situation when my wife? Why can you?
I am going back to this conversation here. It's okay for you to be angry. It's okay. I'm accepting your anger. But why do you want me to get in the same anger with you? What would you gain from me getting into the same anger with you?
To make me feel okay with me being angry.
So your problem is that you don't feel okay with being angry. Let's talk about that.
To justify my anger.
Justify my anger.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that justification you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the spiritual response to that emotion. Let's talk about that justification you're looking for.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
Because you're God, you can't handle me being angry, so I don't want you in my sight.
That's the thing. You are thinking that I can't handle you being angry, but I can.
Yeah. Okay. But God can't, so I don't want you to talk about Him to me.
I'm not going to talk about God with you if you don't want me to talk about God.
Okay.
I'm not going to push my God to you.
Okay, you can stay there.
There you go.
Wow. Wow. Heavy duty.
It's heavy duty stuff.
Heavy duty stuff.
It's heavy duty stuff, man. I'm not talking about easy stuff.
I had a daughter of a resident come to my office in this room, this building here, when that daughter's grandson, 17, 18, was dying of leukemia, and say, where is God?
And my immediate answer to that question is, I don't know where He is. I don't know where He is, but I'm here. You want to talk?
In fact, I read an article that Robert Falkenberg, he was GC president, who's passed now.
Yeah.
To answer the question, where is God?
Where is God?
Yes. And his answer, God is sitting at the same place where he was sitting when he watched his son being died.
That was my answer to her. Same place where God.
What was her reaction to that?
This is 18 years ago, I'm trying to remember.
All right. Let me move on. Let me move on.
You can't leave at noon.
I can't?
No.
Yes, I have. I actually have to go pick up my wife. Some of you want to meet her, so I got to go pick her up and bring her back. So we have, first one was denial, the second was anger, the third one is bargaining. Traditionally, bargaining involves an attempt to negotiate with God, however they call God. Sometimes they seek to negotiate or a compromise to ease their pain. So God, if he is really not dead, I'm going to serve you for the rest of my life.
Let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal.
TV program.
Do you remember a time in the Bible when someone made a bargain with God? I think it was King Hezekiah. And what happened after the bargain? God granted the bargain. God granted the 15 years. But what happened to Hezekiah? All right, need I say more? Need I say more? So there are people that are going to try to bargain with you, bargain with God. How do you respond to that bargaining? Just, once again, acceptance. Hear them out. Let them speak. Let them get it out of their system. Let them get it out of the system. And then there will be some interesting thing. Normally people from bargaining go back to anger when they don't get what they wanted. And so they will go like, oh, I can't believe God is not giving me what I want. So they go back all the way to denial. And throughout that whole thing, all you got to do, the only thing you got to do is what? Listen and be present. Oh, ministry of presence. I think I said that I was going to share with you some about that. Right? So the next stage would be, all right, depression. This is not a clinical diagnosis. It is also referred as a preparatory grieving. It's like a dress rehearsal or practice run for the aftermath. Acceptance with emotional attachment. It is natural to feel sadness and regret, fear, uncertainty. Those are the explanations of this depression. I'm not talking about clinical depression. There will be a diagnosis of clinical depression due to grief. But this is not the job of a chaplain or a pastor to diagnose. Your responsibility, should you accept it, would be for you to be with them as they experience this regret, this sadness, this fear, this uncertainty. Mrs. Silva, the wife of the pastor that I am working, that I am going to be doing the funeral on Sunday, keeps calling me and saying, they call me Ivan, I don't know what I'm going to do without Sandy. I don't know. I've been married to him for 40 years. What am I going to do? Who's going to take care of my bills? So what do you do then? What do you do then? You validate their fears, you validate their feelings, and then you process them with them. Tell me more about this. Let's talk about it. Let's hear you out. Get it out. Tell me about those fears. What are you afraid of? And in the last, it was interesting because the day he died, she kept saying, she accepted that he died, that he had died. She had accepted it. They had been preparing for this for a whole year. But so in the day he died, she's like, I know he's dead, and I'm never going to go look for another man. I'm never going to go look for another man. I'm not getting married again. I'm never going to go look for another man. And when we processed her fears, she said, I'm afraid I may fall in love again with somebody else. So we hear what's going on and we process it. Process that fear. Let's talk about that fear. What do you feel it's going to happen if you fall in love with somebody else? So, once again, the pastoral response to this depression is what? Acceptance, ministry of presence.
Is it the word there is very powerful? That's okay.
And then finally, the person moves into what we have been showing all along. finally the person moves to acceptance. Broadly speaking, it is an indication that there is some emotional detachment and objectivity. But once again, they need to have someone they can trust that will say, it's okay.
Yes, that's right.
It's okay. So what are the two biblical foundations for the ministry of presence? They're not in my presentation. Here they are. John chapter 1. Let's get biblical here. John chapter 1 verse 1 says what? In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Right?
Yes.
And then jump over to 1:14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us, so that we could behold the glory of God. You with me?
Yes.
Dwelt, Greek encamped, pitched a tent, so that we could see. So the first thing about the ministry of presence is that God Himself, Jesus, could have sent Gabriel to die on the cross. Could have chosen any angel in heaven. But He came Himself. You with me? So the ministry of presence first starts with God encamping in our midst and showing us the glory of God. Good? Then the second part of the ministry of presence is in Matthew 25. At the end of the story of the world, God will separate two groups, to His right and to His left. And to the people on His right, He will say, welcome home. Why? What makes them different to the people on the left? For I was hungry, and you came to feed me. I was in jail, and you came to visit. I was sick, and you came. Who is sick? Who is in jail? Who is hungry? Who is naked? Who?
Jesus.
For as long as you have done it unto the least of these, you have done it unto
Me.
So I understand the song that they sang in the church I used to come in Florida. The welcoming song that they had at Patmos Chapel. When I needed a little bit of pick-me-up and good African American preaching, I would go to Patmos Chapel. And they always sang for the welcoming song, the Jesus in me loves the Jesus in you. The Jesus in me loves the Jesus in you. So we see when the Jesus in me loves the Jesus in you. That's the point. Talk about holy ground. If I were to realize that the person I'm visiting in that bed that is very sick is the incarnation of Jesus Christ, would I tell them that they're sick because they have made a mistake or they have committed a sin?
Stop crying and get your act.
All right. You guys are getting it, right? So, this is how it looks at the end. You've seen this part, this thing? No? All right. Let's see if I don't know if it's going to make sound. Let's see. I'm going to.
You're copying me. That's how I ended yesterday.
Oh, okay. You saw this one?
I didn't show the clip. Just showed some pictures.
I got the I got the clip here, but it's not.
Is that on YouTube? Is that on YouTube? Is that on YouTube?
No, it's a movie called The Mission. It's one of the first movies with Robert De Niro.
Yeah, this is what I told you about. Him carrying all this armor for the days of the slave trade.
louder?
You really won't understand what they're saying, because they're speaking their own language. They realize he's the slave trader. They know him. He's been carrying that load. And that's how it feels at the end. I believe he won the Oscar for this movie, so if you guys want to watch it, it's very good. The Mission. The Mission.
He said nothing against Trump there.
I played that song 2 weeks ago at a graveside service for one of our residents. So.
All right. All right, these are a couple things that you need to be aware of, because some of you have asked about your interest on CPE. This is where I'm closing this. Well, these are CPE opportunities. I'm going to give you two choices. One of them is online CPE. This is the only CPE center that offers CPE online. You guys are already here in nursing homes or where you can do your clinical work right here. You meet with them once a week, and then you have to go for the cohort meetings at least once a year, and they are in Phoenix, Arizona. The cohort meetings are usually 2 days. Either you get there on a Sunday and then leave on Tuesday, or either way. So online CPE. Let me see if I can get the website open for you. Community care chaplains. We have plenty of chaplains that have gone through this. You see distance CPE program, community base, spring units January 7th to May 23rd, summer intensive units June 3rd to August 8th, and then the fall unit August 19 to December 19. All right? You have the application right here. You do it completely online. The chaplain that runs this program is Chaplain Jeff Tio from the Philippines. Excellent chaplain, excellent person. I am heavily involved with them. I think it's between $900 US dollars and $1,100 for 1 unit of CPE. Okay? All right, and then here,
So how many units total?
You need 4 units in order to be endorsed and board certified. 4 units. And then here you have all the CPE centers in Canada. In this web page that is called spiritualcare.ca. Spiritualcare.ca. You have all the CPE centers in Canada, in Nova Scotia. And you even have the application right there in New Brunswick, in Prince Edward Island, in Ontario, Manitoba, right there. There's one in Saskatoon.
I think most of them are inside.
Alberta, yes. All these are inside. You have to go do the training with them. Okay? But all of these are your options. There will be a lot of other options. Do not, I repeat, do not waste your money in anything else but these 2. There are 14 organizations that offer in North America, in the North American territory, that offer CPE. The only 2 accepted by Adventist Chaplaincy Ministries are these 2 organizations. There is another one that offers something online called HCA, and they have something that is called cpe.org, that they do that online. Run away from that. Do not waste your money on that. Okay? I'm being honest with you. I'm telling you like it is. So if you want to do CPE, these are the steps you need to follow. The first thing you need to do is you need to speak with these 2 gentlemen right here. The conference has to approve you to do this. Don't go looking for CPE without the approval and the support of your conference. Do that the right way, okay? That's the first thing you need to do. Once you get the support from the conference, then move on to seeking acceptance into a program. I do not know what's the process here in Canada, but over there in the United States, we have what is called educational subsidy or education. We have every pastor has a little bit of money every year for education, about $400. So you do have that money, but in order for you to use it, you need their approval. Okay? So seek the approval of the conference, go there, apply, get accepted into the program, and dress yourself with patience. Pastors tend to be very hurry people. One of the questions I get everywhere I go in the world is, how fast can I get board certified? This is not about how fast you get. This is about the journey to get there. And I'm going to be honest with you. You want to be board certified and endorsed? Good. You need Masters of Divinity, 72 semester hours. Without that, if you have a Masters of another thing, you cannot get board certified. You have to have 72 semester hours beyond college degree. So if you have a Master's of Pastoral Ministry, for example, MAPMIN, you will need to be in the Doctor of Ministry program so that you can add up. You need 72 semester hours. All right? 72.
By the way, in the CSAC, we are now reviewing actually even the CPE, because in the national organization, we just hired, a consultant. So it's on the process of review and everything else, the qualifications, the standards.
What organization are you talking about?
CSAC.
CSAC?
Yeah.
Canada?
Yeah. I'm a member of that one.
Yeah. Well, I don't understand the question.
No, it's a comment, not a question.
Oh, okay. All right. Actually, I think CACC and APC and Adventist Chaplaincy Institute and the National Association of Jewish Chaplains and National Association of Catholic Chaplains in 2020 will finalize all the work that we have been doing for revising the standards for certification and endorsement and all that. One thing is for sure, anywhere, whether in CACC or CPSP or APC, it doesn't matter which one, there is one thing that is sure, is that they require a letter of endorsement by your denomination. And the only people authorized to sign that letter of endorsement in the North American Division are Elder Dan Jackson and Elder Paul Anderson. What we do is we enter into an agreement with the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada where we send them the approval after you guys have done, and they are the ones who make the final letter of endorsement for CASC.
In order, maybe I got this mixed up, so clarify for me here. In order for you to start CPE, you have to complete the MDiv, or can you do CPE training while you're in the midst of...
Yes, you can do CPE training while you're getting your master's. You will not be able to get endorsed and board certified until you're finished with your master's degree.
But you can start it now.
You can start it now. I actually did 5 of my units. Of my 9 units, I did 5 before I had the Masters of Divinity. So yes. Questions?
So I did it from CAC here. And there are only 3 requirements that autobiography, theory, and case study. That's the one that they asked me to present.
Okay.
For certified. But I'm taking MAPMIN.
I
have to finish up to 7.
Yes.
For the approval of endorsement.
Yes. Yes. Now, if you finish your MAPMIN, this is something that I'm going to say here, but I'm going to deny that I said it. If it gets me out of here, I'm going to deny that I'd say it.
Turn the recorders off.
Yeah, I know. We're taking more courses.
If you finish your MAPMIN, you can request endorsement as a you can request as a campus chaplain, for example. With a 48 semester hours, you can request endorsement as a campus chaplain. And CACC has a provision for what is called Associate Certified Chaplain. The North American Division does not endorse associate chaplains. So there will not be an endorsement as an associate chaplain for you, but you can go back to the CACC and request to be board certified as a chaplain in campus. that has enough CPE and all that. Do you understand what I'm saying? There is a way around some of the things. But what I am authorized to say to you, and it can stay in the recording, is that the North American Division, Bill Cork, Chaplain Washington Johnson, myself, and Dr. Paul Anderson, the Director of Adventist Chaplaincy Ministries, are willing to work with all the candidates that want to come from Canada. We only have, how many chaplains do we have from Canada altogether? I think it's like 4 or 5?
No, there's 6 healthcare and some others, so it's under a dozen.
Okay, under a dozen. But we are willing to work with you. Everybody that wants to be endorsed and move on in the process, we are willing and able, and we desire to work with you, and we will follow the guidelines that we have. Please remember that we want to uphold the golden standard. The golden standard is a Master's of Divinity, 72 semester hours. That's the golden standard. But we are willing to work with you to find ways to help the special circumstances here in Canada. Yes, sir.
For somebody who doesn't have the MDU, who is not interested in the MDU, but at the same time is interested in the CPE, and the University of Winnipeg in Winnipeg, and also both university, which is the Salvation Army University, they both offer the full 4 units, which can be done part-time or on time.
Extended or residency.
Now somebody wishes to go through one of those two. How would the NAD, Chaplain's Ministry, look at that?
We don't have any say-so in whatever you want to do as a pastor, or whatever anyone wants to do as a pastor. They want to go take CPE, perfect, take it. Make yourself a better pastor. The one say-so that we have is an endorsement if you want to go full-time into chaplaincy. And in order for anyone to go full-time into chaplaincy, the standard is a Master's of Divinity. So you may have done the CPE to make yourself a better pastor, but you will not be able to be an endorsed chaplain and a board-certified chaplain without the endorsement. That makes sense? And in order for anyone to get the endorsement, professional education beyond the regular education beyond the regular bachelor's degree, it is a requirement. Our chaplains are all trained at graduate level. Because remember what I said yesterday, all chaplains are specialized pastors. There is no such a thing as a surgeon who didn't go to medical school. That makes sense?
Another thing, because for example, the CSAC may have, of course, a different perspective of a certification than the denomination. Because denominational endorsement have different variants to the Catholic have their own. And even in CSAC, we are now exploring, the endorsement from the native ministry, which actually doesn't have a formal educational system for native chaplaincy. So, but the point is, I think there should be a sort of, further studies from the NAD. And if you want to produce more chaplains, say, for the correctional, and of course, the military have their own set of standards too, we should have sort of meet somewhere that we can have more Adventist chaplaincy to serve in many other aspects of healthcare. That's secular.
There are very clear standards in the North American Division policy. Yes, got it. There are very clear standards in the North American Division policy for endorsement of different kinds of chaplaincy. You can go to the nad.adventistchaplains.org and you will find answers to all the questions.
I mean getting halfway between
One thing I'm going to be very clear. we will not allow world institutions to dictate the way we see chaplaincy.
Circle of Hope Network, doing life and being church together.